So welcome, Stephen.
Great. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. So when did you have a sense that you were going to use music and as part of a healing, as part of your destiny in your life? Did you know that kind of early on?
Pretty much. I got into music early on as a kid, but it was always a hobby, something I enjoyed doing. In college, though, I really started getting into it through jazz and improvisation studies, but it wasn't so much healing until 1969. I came out to California for a 2-week visit. What I thought was a 2-week visit. I had an experience sitting under some majestic redwoods, a deep meditation, and started hearing the music that I had been reading about in ancient Egypt and ancient Greece, where music was a healing art, and wondering why no one was working with that nowadays. And I set upon myself the task of learning about healing and music for higher consciousness.
So that particular experience was so powerful to you that it literally shifted your life?
Well, it did, because I already had the idea and the concept, and I was accepted and created a graduate program where I could study that and read all about it. But that was all left brain reading, history. Right. What happened in California, this was all natural, just under the trees.
That's what everyone says.
Right.
But it's true with you, okay.
And I heard the music and heard essentially the message. This is the music that you've been searching for. It's the music that ultimately got recorded as Chakra Suite, originally when it came out as Spectrum Suite, because people didn't know what chakras were. But this was the music you've been searching for. And the other part, and your mission, is to get this out into the world.
That clearly.
Yes, and that, I go, wait a minute, I'm a musician. I don't know about business. What do you mean? You know, so there was no other instruction there, but within a short period of time, as the events unfolded, I wound up being at a sister facility like Allan, where the leaders of the human potential movement came in, where I would get a chance to play this new music and get some guidance. And I was told what you need to do to put this concept of healing music on the map is you need to take it from just meditation or just isn't this nice or isn't I feel relaxed. Do scientific research. Go back to graduate school. Now, this is after leaving graduate school, saying, I'm never going back to graduate school, you know, I'm done with college, and say, this is what you need to do to validate. So I became the first person in academia to study the healing powers of music and higher consciousness, using brainwave biofeedback, using the brand new science of Kirlian photography, aura photography, studying energy fields and photographing them, some of the leading scientists of the time. And that was, in a sense, what gave me the context and the framework to talk about healing music and talk about these special things that my music was bringing to the field of music that other music didn't have. I'll give you an example in a moment. But this is no longer just my opinion, because certainly my academic advisors were typical academic advisors. You know, you will thank us later on for being so strict with you. And I'm going, no, I won't. Well, years later, I thank them because I had to have a great experimental design. No one has ever found flaw with the design. The research proved that using the right music can instantly change your brainwaves. Not waiting 20 minutes like the music therapist said. Using classical music, you can get a slight change or you could get relaxed after 20 minutes. And you'll appreciate this. When I found out about that field, I said, excuse me, I'm from New York. I don't have 20 minutes. What do you have that'll get me there in a minute? And they said, that's impossible. No music can get you relaxed in a minute. I said, let me show you my new music. Let me show you the scientific data. Let me play it. And when my first album came out, one of the reasons why it got around the world is that people, both meditators and people who've never meditated before, didn't know what the word meant, didn't know what relaxation was. So, wow, I'm taking a deep breath. I like the way this feels. What is that called? It's called relaxation. And there was an instantaneous state-related experience. Well, there were theories and concepts behind what I do with music, and a lot of that has to do with taking music out of the linear aspect, the predictive model, the way we've been culturally conditioned to respond to music. Let me give you an example. I've done this in my workshops ever since the beginning. If I sing a familiar pattern, watch what happens in your body at the end of it. So, and those of you who are following at home,
Okay,
pay
good.
attention. So it's very simple. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. And how many of you are holding your breath right now? Hearing that last note in your head, do, but holding your breath. Why? Because we know what's
There's
supposed to
something
happen.
coming next,
Right.
right.
It's like waiting for the other shoe to drop. The problem is that keeps you hung up in the future. Relaxation and healing only happens in the now, in the present moment. It's the power of now, which Eckhart Tolle has been talking about for years. I've been talking about for 40 years. And the concept in sound and music, it's immediate, but it's something no one ever paid attention to. My graduate faculty said, you're violating every rule of classical composition. I said, yes.
That's
And
the
why,
point.
Right, that's the reason the music works that way. But it was Western classical music, not Eastern classical music. The Tibetan Buddhist, the concept of chant and mantra, and some of the Indian raga, all understood that of being in the moment, being in the now. The timeless moment allows you to get, and the other big aspect, where coming from a jazz and rock background, everything was all filled up. In those days, the faster you played, the more points you got. And I was able to play really fast. And that was great. A lot
But
of
you knew
ego.
the space had a lot to say.
I didn't back then.
Oh, I see.
But after getting into
Yeah, that's right.
meditation
Yeah,
and
right.
yoga,
Right.
and hearing and feeling in my own body, I'd play some notes, I'd listen to the reverberations, that there was room for the echoes and the overtones. And that first day, after that experience in the woods, I found myself at a piano. Part of the other magic of that day is I went to, quote, the wrong building of the meeting I was supposed to go to.
Wow.
No one was there, but there was a big, old, upright piano from like 1920s that sounded great. It was almost like a grand. Playing the sustain pedal, I am going soaring, transported into the space between the notes. And I've always used that as my metaphor. So when Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer started talking about the space between thoughts, the gap between thoughts, I said, that's what I've been talking about for all these years. That's what I hear, and that's where I hear the next phrase that I'm going to play. I don't know what I'm going to play typically until I play it. And sometimes I don't even know after I play it. I don't hear it until I listen to the playback. But that concept and opening up, it also means that in order to play the music that I do, and this is what's encoded into all the albums, I have to be in that space. I can't fake it. And so for me, when I go in to do a recording, the recording studio is my temple. It is the place where I connect to the quantum field and to God and to the universe and my angelic helpers and my band, the invisible band that most people can't see. Some of them do. And it's where, in fact, my last major album, Paradigm Shift, there were two songs that I felt like I was levitating. And one of them, I did get up out of the piano, off the piano bench, and walk back to the control room. I didn't see, and I've been in that studio for 5 years. I know there's a big glass door separating the control room. I didn't see it. Yes. And luckily, my head was kind of down because I was just kind of floating back there, and I hit right here. So I had a big scar for a while, a bump, but I didn't break my nose. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here right now. Wow. So it was such a deep place where the music just pours into me. And I don't necessarily, I would hear it in the moment. And one time I remember thinking, wow, I really like that phrase. I couldn't remember what I just played. So it's totally, for me, being in the moment. And the other thing I learned from the early research is that the state of the performer, the recording artist, the musician, is recorded when you make a recording. So when you listen, if you're sensitive and you're paying attention to that, you will pick up on that. The phrase is, music is a carrier wave for consciousness. And that was kind of my secret for it. I didn't talk about that publicly per se much early on, so a lot of other musicians didn't necessarily figure that out, but any musician is going to be imprinting their consciousness.
It's a vibration.
Right.
Exactly.
And so if you're coming from a position of fear or uptightness or anxiety, as many classical people do when they're doing a concert, because everyone knows what the right notes are, and people are going to mark off points and criticize you if you play the wrong notes. One of the great things about being a composer and being able to improvise is no one knows what the right notes are, including me. So I don't have to worry about playing wrong notes. And in the recording studio, yes, there have been a few times that I've hit some wrong notes. We just erase that. You never hear it. So I never have to come from a position of fear. And that allows my heart to open up and just the positive energy to come through. And that's what a lot of people have been picking up on without even realizing that's part of the Halpern effect, or that's part of the inner peace effect. That, and it's also, it's not me, it's the energy that comes through. In fact, my very first album, which had colors like this on the cover with a curly and picture of a leaf, I didn't even have my name on the cover. Stores wouldn't carry it. They said, who did this? Well, the Leaf didn't record it. You have to put your
in photography, didn't
right.
it?
You have to put your name. I said, but
Right.
it wasn't me.
Right.
I just, I'm a vehicle. They said, we don't care. You're putting out an album. You got to have a name.
We got to put it in a slot
Right,
for S
exactly.
or H.
H.
Right.
So I
right.
said, okay, that's the way the world is. I'll do that.
Yeah, right.
It
That's
was small
fine.
thing.
Right.
But it was those things.
But energetically, you were feeling that. So
Oh,
the
from
album
the
and the
first day.
music, right? Yeah, exactly.
Energetically, in fact, I was in a meditation group with Dr. J.J. Hurtak at the time, and this was a meditation that we had
He's
come
the
up
Keys
with.
of Enoch.
Yes.
Right.
And that was where someone else was doing a chakra meditation, but doing, as a musician, it was very boring. They were just using like a little pitch pipe. Well, I don't want to listen to it in different keys. I said, well, let's do that with music. And trumpet was not an instrument to do that with. So I had one of the first of these incredible electric pianos invented by Harold Rhodes. That's basically like crystal tuning forks and crystal bowls and tuning forks, very pure healing tone. And that's why in the field of sound healing, I had to educate a lot of people about the whole concept of sound healing. There was no one talking nationally before me about sound healing as a genre, as a concept. So in addition to talking about my own music, it was necessary to educate the media, educate people about the concept of sound healing, that it's very ancient and that it's immediate and it works right now. You don't have to think about anything. Sound resonates automatically. We entrain to rhythms automatically. And that was the beauty of using music. You didn't have to study it. It happens automatically. It's legal. It's non-addictive. It's non-fattening. It's energy renewable. There's all these good things. I used to joke about it. So many people have headaches and stress-related diseases. Instead of taking aspirin, you can just listen to some of this music. Until somebody from a pharmaceutical representative said, we don't like you telling people about that. I said, come on, you sell billions of aspirin. I sell, a couple thousand, LPs. He said, well, the concept could spread. And I go, yeah, let's spread the concept. So now a lot of people are self-medicating with learning to relax, using many things, yoga, meditation, etc. But music is one of the only things that you could have on in the background to keep you balanced while you're doing other things. And you can't do that with somebody leading a guided meditation with words in your head. If we're trying to talk
Right, because it
now,
translates.
Right.
Right.
If you have
Too
someone
much-
else's voice in your head, it's crazy making.
It's separation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So music is always so interesting that it can fill a room that's already full because it can become transparent. So you have all these benefits. And the other thing that a lot of people don't understand about playing this kind of healing music and meditation music, it's very hard to play without a beat, a regular beat. It's very hard to leave the space because we've all been trained as musicians to fill up all the space. And as I said, I was very good at that. But that's not what this music is about. And also then what people haven't really learned is how to listen to the space between those. Many people have only heard my music on little boom boxes or on stereos. Only, maybe in the early days, and now again people are starting to listen with headphones, not while they're multitasking, but just closing the eyes, go inside and listen to the music as a meditation. And then any album that you have, becomes 2 albums, becomes the generic or the general relaxing background music. But then it's like Tibetan bowls or going into the place, the sacred space of sound, getting to the silence beyond the sound. And that's where you really tune into the energy that's coming in through the studio. And there have been times that the studio engineer has also been so moved, and we can't even talk, because we realize, I'm getting a chill as I say that right now, I mean, sometimes the lights would flash, or in the early days, there would be a flash of light in the studio. And that was a sign that my guides or my angel, my bandmates were there. And the engineer who did not believe in that stuff, what was that just happened? And we talk about, well, that was a voltage surge. So for years, we would just talk, was that another voltage? Yes, it was. And we didn't say anything else. But those magic moments have been on every album. There's at least one major moment that just changed the vibe in the studio. And when I started doing this, how could you record a whole 20-minute song without making mistakes? Well, when you get into the zone and you make your connection, you're tapping into perfection. So that's been the thing, and it goes on. And my most recent album that's been out there, Paradigm Shift, and the new one, that the video that we saw, or we'll see in a moment.
No, I think they've seen it.
Just saw it.
Right.
Because I never see myself when I'm recording. And now with technology and getting the green screen technology, the studio has just gotten some facilities. So I said, let's just turn the video camera on, and I'll just do a sound check. Well, the sound check turned into, I made a connection and I was off. Closed my eyes and you'll see, and there were sometimes that I saw myself, smiling and I remember what happened right then is I heard something and I felt this chill and there was something, and you see that right on there. And then in the background, we have some beautiful visuals behind the live performance. And this is the new version of the same electric piano. This is the new incarnation of the Rhodes Mark VII. So I'm one of the first people to have it. And we made a special combination of reverb and echo that no one else has. And if you listen to that with headphones, you could feel it moving inside your head. It will literally stimulate certain meditative centers.
I was listening to it a lot. We were timing it out, so it was on a lot. And I had headphones on to make. After a while, I was like,
right.
Did I time it out that time? It's because it's on a
right on a loop.
Right.
And I recorded with brainwave entrainment keyed to deep theta to 4 hertz, 4 cycles per second. So I was locked into that zone, and I recorded it 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 as part of the deep theta. Let's see what it was as an experiment. And boy, did I have a surprise that first day. I mean, it was like playing, and suddenly it was like, whoosh, and I was in another space, and that is what you see on that.
That's great. We'll talk some more about how you consciously infuse that energy of love, of healing, of the infinite, of oneness, of inclusion, consciously into the music, or how you get in that state.
Well, one of the things I would say is that when I was first getting involved in metaphysical studies, consciousness studies, one of the early things I read, like many people, were the writings of Ed Casey. And at one point, I read in a book that was actually called Music as the Bridge, a little tiny book by Shirley Rab Winston, that on one page, there was something called the Musician's Prayer. And it incorporated the concept of, through the recording, through the music that you play, being of service to those who are providing the highest and the best, that serves the highest good of those who listen. And as I was reading, I was speaking along with the words that I hadn't read yet.
Wow.
In other words, the chill factor was going on, and I go, wow, I know this. Wow. Well, that past lives and other things, there's a whole other topic we can or probably won't get into, but there's a whole lot more coming out about forensic proof that the theory of reincarnation is not a theory. And situations like that were a confirmation for me that this was my path, this is what I was here to be doing this time, because I've been practicing and doing things like that in the past. So knowing that, and also studying and reading the work of Dr. John Diamond, that how you are physically and mentally and spiritually is impressed and recorded in the recordings. Again, some of the scientists that I was connecting with early on were some of the first people to measure that. And you could do some of that through muscle testing, but also through machinery and subtle energies. Some of the other scientists I worked with were Itzhak Bentov, who invented these incredibly sophisticated, sensitive machinery that's never, it was proprietary, but because we were part of his research team, I had a chance to use that in my own research. And at that point, it was understood as a sacred vow and as part of the work that I need to be in that place of coming from love, not from ego. The old jazz in New York, that was ego. That was fun while it lasted, and it was good, it was cutthroat, and it was all the things, just as there is that in classical music. But in this New Age music, it was beside the point. If I were thinking, if I played, as would sometimes happen, suddenly in the studio, I'd play something I had never played before, since I never studied classical piano. So the first time I did a two-handed arpeggio run and all the notes are right, it was like, wow, where did that come from? And I would think, that was pretty good. Break the spell,
Right.
and the next note is like a So I learned that you keep the ego out, and it's just being of service. So being the president of my own company, that meant I have to pay for every recording session. So it was a matter also of practicality. If you find that you can record much more effectively, energetically, and cost-wise and time-wise by coming from a place of love and openness and flow and making the connection and not worrying, I'd always cover the clock, so I wasn't on a time basis. I didn't have another producer saying, you must get this right. If something, didn't work right, we'd take it again. And that flow just manifests. And that's carried through from the earliest recordings to the one I did last week. And that's where the magic continues to happen. And that's, some people say, so why do you still do recordings? You have 55 or 75 recordings. Why do you do another one? Because there's always new combinations and always new things. On Paradigm Shift, one of the things that really surprised me...
We're talking about something infinite, actually.
Right.
Cutting a piece of the infinite out.
Exactly. And there were two things that were one of the reasons I called the album Paradigm Shift, because basically I'm known as being not melodically, let's put it this way, I don't focus on the melodic imperative, because people always talk about the healing powers of melody, or the importance of melody. Well, melody is one of those things, like the scale, what I call the scalus interruptus, that's in fact the name of my little YouTube video on that, that keeps you hung up in the left brain because you are processed and conditioned to follow a melody.
There's a preconditioned idea about it.
Right, which is why the popularity of crystal bowls or Tibetan bowls or even tuning forks, there's no melody. Now, at a certain point they could get a little boring because there is no variation, but when you get into the depth of that one tone, of course, then as you start listening to the bowls, you get into the overtones. And when they start singing, then there's other notes, and there's several notes happening at once. In fact, my teacher on that point, I'd say, would be Allan Watts, the great philosopher and meditation teacher. In 1970, I heard him speak at my college, graduate school, and he played a Tibetan bowl. And I'm going, as a jazz musician, well, yeah, do something else.
Yeah, what else
you got? And then he said, now this time, listen to the furthest away sound. Boom. And listen as the sound fades away. So it was instant hearing test and acuity. And there was in that second, it was a shift of consciousness. And it was what I was already doing on piano, but now I was translating that to an instrument that was known as having just one note, and then suddenly you hear that all these other notes in there. So that, plus the fact that I have a solemn responsibility as a sound healer, that when I'm in the studio, knowing that people are going to be listening to what I do, I have to be in the highest and purest place. There was one time in the mid-'80s that my car was hit in the parking lot. I had stopped to get something on the way to the studio. And it wasn't a bad accident, but it was, a little
Enough
fender
to
bender.
be upsetting a little.
And I meditated, and I thought I had cleansed it, and we did the session. Music sounded fine. Energetically, it wasn't right.
You weren't pure. You were
Right. I listened to it,
upset.
and something didn't feel right, so I erased it. My business manager was so upset.
I
He said,
could imagine.
you erased a whole perfect recording. Do you know how much that money that cost? I said, you don't understand it, and you're fired. So it was like,
Right.
I don't need that.
The one thing that's clear is that you don't understand.
Right.
That's clear.
And that point, so it's a responsibility that I've always felt. I mean, it's not just about the notes, it's about the energy that comes through. So that's where it is. And I open myself. One of the other things, going back to the Casey prayer, the musician's prayer, I was invited shortly after that to give my first performance at the Edgar Casey headquarters in Virginia Beach. I was a regular at the ARE clinic, the Edgar Casey Type Clinic with Gladys and Bill McGarry in Phoenix. And I started talking in my first lecture and keynote about the musician's prayer. And they come over to me and say, wait a minute, we don't know anything about this musician's prayer. Where did you find that? That's nowhere in the literature. And they check the big codex and the index there. That doesn't exist. And I said, okay, so did I make this
Am
all?
I delusional?
Did I make this up? And we all look, and no one can find. And finally, I'm again meditating with the book, and I open up my hands right on the page.
Wow.
So I've had that experience. And so here it is. I didn't make it up. It does exist.
He did say it. He did.
And I taught them what
That's
they didn't even
funny.
know they had.
Wow.
I also had an experience in 1970, shortly after I came out to California, where I was recreating my record collection that I had, that I left in college when I came out to California. And at one point, I am literally guided to the classical music section. I'd never been there.
Wow.
Now, I liked Liszt and Chopin, but I had no classical LPs in my collection. I hadn't studied classical per se. But I had read about the spiritual experiences of some of the great masters, who were great masters, and so many of them had their own experiences of the music filling their head. Mozart talks about it, Liszt, Chopin, Schubert, many of them did. Some of them couldn't talk about it that openly, but they would write about it. I'd read what they wrote, not necessarily study the music. And this one day, I'm pushed, guided there. My hand shoots out into a box of 100 LPs, and I pull out one, and it was a new album, even in a used record store, that the BBC had just recorded of an English housewife named Rosemary Brown. And she was channeling music from Liszt and Chopin and Rachmaninoff and some other people. And it was verified by the BBC. But for me, reading the liner notes of the process where sometimes your fingers are moved, and I had just started playing some things that I had never done, I go, wow. So it was just a paradigm shifter. Well, last year when I was recording the album, Paradigm Shift, there were a couple little melodies. And there's one that you hear where it's like ba-da-dum, 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 going down, playing the octave. And what I also learned about sound is that not only do we resonate and respond to the rhythms, any beat will get your heart beating in time, that's called rhythm entrainment, but there's also the phenomenon of resonance. Anything that vibrates will send out vibrations at that frequency, will respond to vibrations. So I would feel sounds in my body. And one of the interesting things is to play music and play some notes in different octaves. But in 35 years, I had never recorded this little phrase in that way. And when I did, it was like my head opened up, the waters parted, and I heard a whole new composition. Wow. So I just started playing it. But it started from these three little notes. And the improvisation had symmetry to it. So what was different is that this had, in a sense, some classical symmetry. It had a beginning, a middle, and it didn't necessarily go somewhere, but it had a similarity at the beginning and the end. And as you tune in, you would feel that. Well, the other thing I noticed as I was recording that piece, and it started on the anniversary, January 4th, 2009, which was the 34th anniversary of my very first day in the studio recording Chakra Street, January 4th, 1975. Wow. I always try to book in on that anniversary. It's a special couple of days.
Right.
It was some of the most powerful, heart-opening, uplifting vibes, spiritual energy in the studio. The engineer also said, the studio feels holy today. He had never said that before. I mean, we both felt it. It was just the two of us. There was no video going on that day, but it was something really, really, really special. Well, I've since been getting other people who've been really listening to that album, who've been, even without me saying anything about it, who've been picking up that there was a new octave of energy that either I'm connecting with or that's connecting me with me that's on that album. So that was a surprise. I didn't go in there saying, today I'm going to challenge.
But interestingly enough, you're growing. So
Well,
you would think. You know what I mean? On some level,
Yes.
you're expanding, and the energies on the planet and the quantums.
Yes,
And, right. So-
but could I have told you on January
Right.
3rd that tomorrow
Right.
I'm going to do something I've never done before?
Probably not.
Absolutely not.
But interestingly,
I was open to it and ready for
right,
it, right?
right, exactly.
The intention was set, the openness, the stage was set. Any studio date that I have, I start the day before and the night before getting all my energy fields aligned and meditate underneath my own redwood tree that I have in my backyard and really setting the tone so that when I get in there from the first note, I don't spend an hour warming up. I may not have played, as in that case, I may not have played piano for 3 weeks. I go in there and from the first thing, things start flowing. So I've had enough of those experiences in my life, and now looking back, in fact, I was talking to a friend this morning. He says, you ought to write a book. No one will believe, or people would love to hear, all these secret stories that no one knows about.
Well, they will now.
That,
Now you've revealed the secrets of the book.
I didn't just, fall off the turnip truck one day and said, I think I'll invent a new form of music today.
Right.
I had some help, and I've always been very, very clear and honoring of the fact that it's a conscious co-creation. And it's just that most people can't see these beings, but the energies of light and love and higher spiritual dimensionalities, or whatever words we want to call, and right on cue, we have a little higher. In fact, if you're hearing the playing on the video, feel it going through your body right now. It's a little chakra cleansing as
right.
the Doppler shift in sound goes through. So we could use some of these sounds. It's not like a siren in New York that's just cutting through like a knife. So they're good, funny sounds. I've always, also the other thing is, I came into this life being much more sensitive to sound than most people. When I was a kid, people thought I was weird. Then I was just eccentric, and then it was, oh, well, he's a composer. He's allowed to feel
right.
that.
He's an artist. Actually, it's
Right.
interesting. I was going to ask you, in 30 seconds, what you want everybody to know, and actually you said it. So it's like we communicated that way. So we're
Yeah.
coming to the end of the show, surprisingly enough. So if you want any information about Stephen, about the videos, about the art project, call me, Allan, 805-687-2053. Good night. We love you. God bless you. Thank you.